Welcome to the EHE Fast Growth Podcast. I'm Simon Landy, the CMO here at EHE Ventures Studio. This series is where ambitious founders and forward-thinking investors come to scale big ideas the Venture Studio way. Whether you're building, backing, or just exploring what startup success looks like, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of Fast Growth, the Venture Studio way. Today, we're tackling a topic that's very important for any early stage founder, building an MVP, which stands for Minimum Viable Product. Now, we hear the term MVP thrown around a lot, but what does it actually mean? How do you build something that's lean, functional, and actually useful without overcomplicating things? And more importantly, how do you know when it's ready to launch? And what's the difference between MVP, POC, prototype, alpha version, beta version? The list goes on. To answer these questions, I'm joined by two people who know this space inside out. First up, we've got Aleksa Vukotic, the CTO here at EHE Ventures Studio. Aleksa's been on both sides of the table, helping founders build scalable products for launch and investing in early stage startups. He knows exactly what it takes to turn an idea into a working product. And joining him is our very good friend, Andy Nicol, Managing Director at Sputnik Digital. Andy and his team have built digital products for major brands like Go Compare and Swinton Insurance. But he's also worked with startups, helping them take their very first product to market. So he also brings a great perspective on what works at both the startup and enterprise level. Hi guys, great to have you both here.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks for having us.
Excellent. Right, let's get straight in. Before we dive into MVPs, let's sort of catch up a bit on your backgrounds. Obviously, Aleksa, I know you've worked on both the founder and the investor side. And Andy, you've helped some big names build some very extensive digital products. So what drew you both to startup and sort of early stage product development, and what are you enjoying about it? Aleksa, start with you.
Okay, so I've been in technology for 20 odd years now. Started by building software for others, then expanded into running big teams and building huge products for large companies, which was exciting, but it felt like taking a lot of resource to and spending a lot of time to get somewhere. What has always missed in that journey was that agility, that ability to do a lot with a little. And I have, following 15 or close to 20 years career in software consultancy and big corporate, came into the startup world with some people I've met early in my career. Started the Startup Factory, which became the EHE Ventures Studio, with an idea to help as many people as possible get from 0 to 1, rather than from 100 to 101, which is a much more exciting, much more challenging, but also much more rewarding journey from both learning experience, but also in technology, in making these little decisions and how you best use your little time and money you have early on to make a difference.
Brilliant. Andy?
Curiosity, Simon, I think. We sometimes call ourselves an innovation and digital engineering agency, and it's the innovation bit, I think, that I quite enjoy. Probably why I'm agency side and not in-house. 25 years being an assistant and a consultant, helping big, small, everyone. But I've never been part of a big company, and I've not worked for Apple, IBM, whoever. So everything for me is a little skunkworks project, even if it's £1 million thing for whoever. It's always pretty well defined, pretty well, there's a vision and a package, and asking the question, what can we do? What's possible? Wouldn't it be cool if we did such and such a thing? So lucky to get inside and insight into so many businesses. That's what draws me to it.
Yeah, I can vouch for that from my previous work. But Andy, so I suppose within Sputnik, what percentage, I guess over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, what percentage of your business would you say is that sort of early stage startup helping a founder with their business?
In terms of revenue, not a lot. Because startups haven't got any money. We probably spend quite a lot of our time doing it. I'd say maybe, I don't know, maybe 10% or so is
Yeah.
just talking people through stuff. I've got a day job and responsibilities and everything else. But as we know you guys and various others from hanging around the startup ecosystem, just keep an eye on what's going on and being a sounding board for people. And if we can help, we help. And if we can't, we can signpost.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So, as I said at the beginning, MVPs mean different things to different people. What are your definitions of what an MVP is? Because they might differ slightly. And what's the sort of biggest misconception you think founders have about them?
Do you want to go first, Aleksa?
Sure, I will. Happy to go first. MVP has been around so much that everybody knows what the acronym stands for. I hate acronyms, so I like to kind of say things as they are, so kind of clarity for everyone. MVP, as you said, stands for minimal viable product, and each word has a meaning there. Minimum, making sure you can get something quickly to the market, viable, something that is actually marketable and usable, and a product still following that big vision of why you got where you got to. When you start a company or a product, you start with an idea, and that's little interesting thing, a seed of something big. But idea on its own isn't valued much, really. I mean, you come with a lot of ideas, and a lot of people have some ideas, and you'll see it in the market that not always people who come with idea first will be the big winners in that market. It's either who does it the best. So it is about execution. So how I like to see the MVP is that first foray for some abstract idea that you have, a vision into something concrete that you can demonstrate and test in the real world as you would a product.
Yeah, I say I wouldn't disagree with any of that. I think there is a grey area of definitions for MVP. For me, it's getting something that you can start selling from. It's the fledgling business. And I think you're going to cover prototypes and proof of concepts and other things later on. But you need. I think it's about whether not asking people what they think of something, but testing whether they actually use it, and more importantly, part with cash for it. So I think Zappos, American shoe company, started off with a bunch of shoes on a website, and if anyone bought one, they ran to the shop, bought the shoes, posted them up. DoorDash did something similar with food delivery, restaurant delivery. People could, I think they had a website with a phone number on it, and then people would phone through their order, and then they'd run off to a restaurant and pick up the order and drop it off. The phone number literally rang the founders' phones. So they're about as minimum as you get, but it's more than saying, would you use a food delivery service? Everyone goes, that sounds handy. But will they part with cash? Will it work? It doesn't matter if there's smoke and mirrors and the phrase mechanical Turk, which is an interesting concept from the 1700s, if people want to Google it, about manually doing things that you would expect to be automated. So I think the biggest misconception is that an MVP is just a cheaper, faster version of the final product. And I think if it's cheap and fast, people end up just getting as far as prototype. Like, have they built something that's actually they're happy to put in the hands of consumers? And especially if it's a SaaS product, if you build it too cheap with templates and low code, no code solutions, and then you put it in front of people, it just doesn't feel like there's no trust. I don't know. I think the biggest misconception or the biggest risk is that people overemphasize the minimum, because the idea is that an MVP is, or the conception is that an MVP is a cheap way of doing something. And it is about doing it cheap, but not so cheap that it's rubbish.
That's a great point, really, in terms of the misconceptions. I think it is definitely not a smaller version of the product, because product can become quite a big thing. What the MVP should really do is focus on the very important thing, is the big part of it, and not have anything else around it. Don't scale every part of product down to get to the MVP. I like that comment, Andy.
So you mentioned both proof of concept and prototype actually in that answer, as what an MVP isn't. So is a proof of concept what you were describing there then, which is you can prove the viability of something without necessarily it selling, or is it different to that?
In my world, I'd use that in the technical proof of concept. So can it be done? Can you plug into ChatGPT to do something? Does the output match what you need? There's no point building an entire solution if some core unknown kernel of technology hasn't been tested. So for me, it's about doing that bit first before wasting your time on everything else if you're too early to market. Would you agree with that one, Aleksa, on proof of concept?
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that at all. I think when you start from your, having a problem that you think there might be a solution for. I mean, first of all, you want to figure out how big that problem is. Is that something that you want to kind of can address? And there is a space for various exercises early on that you can do with user research, even paper-based exercises that you can do to demonstrate that little value, which doesn't bring you to an MVP because it's still theoretical, and that's the big difference really, but can give you a lot of learnings and benefits from it. I think a proof of concept coming to that journey, if you start from kind of a pure paper exercise, pure design, for example, you can put a little bit around it to have a prototype which can, like Andy rightly said, perhaps test a technical viability of the product. Can we actually do this? That is a good reason to have a prototype. Or can it fit into my customers' processes? So they don't need to change their workflows to use my product. So those are little things that can demonstrate value, give you a lot of learnings, but won't give you that one thing that the product would give you, a paying customer. So I think there is definitely space for all of these, and I think names probably don't matter too much. I mean, someone's proof of concept might be someone else's MVP. I think it's all a bit about terminology, so I wouldn't go too deep into that. But it is about the level of detail and the level of usability to someone who doesn't know about your product that can differentiate the MVP.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Good. Right, I'm glad you clarified that, because what I was going to ask next was, would we always recommend, or would you two always recommend that someone does a proof of concept and then an MVP? I think what you're saying, Aleksa, no, that's not necessarily the case.
I think when we're doing a product, we always tackle the hard bits first. Lots of people go and they build like the login pages, but they're all tried and tested and done. They take time, they cost money. But then you get to the hard bit and you've spent loads of time and money and effort and stress building this thing. So I think we always start with a proof of concept in that what's the hard bit? Let's tackle that. Then we probably move on to prototype if we're going to define it as that, which for us is, I guess, high fidelity screens of the entire user journey that brings the thing to life. So instead of trying to explain what our product does in words, pictures paint 1,000 words. So we come up with these things, and whether they're clickable or just in a PowerPoint deck or a folder full of images, at least people can go, oh, right, I get it. Here's the payment screen. Here's how you upload an Excel spreadsheet of, I don't know, payroll or whatever you got to do. But there are no codes being written. They're just JPEGs. And so for us, we probably use the term prototype at that. And then MVP is about building it with the minimum. Now you've got great designs, you've proved the concept. Hopefully you've done some user research and people have said, yeah, I'd love to use that before you build it. Or you know that there's a market for it, or there's not someone already doing it at half the price you want to take it to market for, or whatever you want to do. The user research, market research stuff. And then the MVP, you're armed with everything. You've got the designs, you've tested the technical feasibility, scale back what you need to build, to put it in front of a customer, and then you can build your MVP at the end. So I probably would follow those general steps, not rigidly, but it just feels natural to do so, I think.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think you mentioned something there that might be worth touching on about the difference between, the core product or the core user journey that your customer expects to do, all the supporting journeys that have to be there, but they might not be required at this early because they are proven or they are done before, or they don't justify the investment at the stage with the MVP. And that is something we have seen quite a lot in Venture Studio. We work with founders and trying to focus on the actual secret sauce that the product gives you, not on, and I'll give you some example, not an onboarding journey and login screen. That's been done millions of times. Without a product, there's no point having a login journey or payment gateway or support mechanism. Before you have zero customers, you won't be thinking about how you're going to support them if they have problems, because there's no one there yet. So I think that bit is really good in kind of focusing the MVP. Really should be 90% of it, that core journey. And there may be a few supporting journey that need to be around to support it. But the main thing, how you maintain the minimal bit and the low cost bit, is just to focus on really what's important.
Brilliant. Which leads me on to the next question, actually, which I'll direct to you first, Aleksa, I think, which is, so when you're working with founders, and obviously you work with many in your time, what are the key questions they should be asking themselves, before a single line of code is put down?
Yeah, that is a good question for a couple of reasons. One, like anything, any problems you're trying to solve, it's always good to think about things. I know it from my maths days back in school or at university. Kind of always have time to consider and think before doing, like measure twice, cut once kind of thing. But also specifically in the space of building product, because technology has been in huge demand in the last decade or two. And with that, the price went up as well. So it's costly, really. So you want really to use that capital required for technology build in the best possible way, which means you want to be thinking before you write any code. And how we go about it, I mean, the first and foremost question we ask our founders is why? Why would anyone buy, use, want the product that we are thinking of? That in turn comes from the actual problem you're trying to solve. So I think one of the challenges that I've seen quite a lot is a lot of founders start thinking about the solution and what the product should do, where I think what is really important is what problems that the product solve. Doesn't matter how, because how it can change. But why would someone have that problem? What's the pain reliever? Because those are the motivations that someone will have to part with their hard-earned money to buy something else to, I don't know, help them be more efficient or do something that couldn't do before. So that part of the, what is my problem? That is the first, foremost, rather than solution. And then why would someone come into this ecosystem? Why would someone buy the problem? Why would someone use what they use? And then from there, it becomes a bit easier to think about what is it that my product should have, to focus on that hopefully one, maybe a few core user journeys that make a difference, rather than all those little supporting journeys that don't really make much difference.
Brilliant. I'm going to change this question slightly for you, Andy, because of something you said before, which is, common mistake we see is that founders, try to build out too much too soon. And then you've also mentioned that some try and build a light version of something that doesn't actually achieve anything. So how do you balance that? So how do you balance the planning to get the right amount of features in an MVP so that it achieves what it's trying to achieve without over-engineering it and delivering more than necessary?
I think the Google Design Sprint's got some interesting thoughts on that, which is about the divergent thinking, convergent thinking, if you guys are familiar with that stuff. And I think no matter what the budget is, and no one has an infinite budget for anything, and we could spend 100 million quid coming up with cool ideas, and no one's got 100 million quid. But what we tend to do is go through this process of like, this thing needs to blow people away. This is the next generation thing. Whatever you're bringing to market is going to be cool. Stripe didn't come along and go, right, we'll bring checkbooks or whatever. So let's think of all the cool things that this thing could do. And then we'll tot it all up and it'll be 20 million quid. And people go, I've only got 500 quid. And you go, that's fine. Let's put all these things back in the box. And, which ones can we live without? And so this Google Design Sprint has this divergent thinking, convergent thinking process. And to get to the good ideas, sometimes you have to do divergent thinking. You have to go, oh yeah, log in. You need to log in. Need a password reminder. If you don't write them down, you keep thinking them. Like psychologically, they stay in your brain. So just doing this divergent thinking of just getting everything this thing could ever do, push notifications, H2L emails, payment processing, I don't know, peer reviews, whatever it is. And then knuckle right back down, as Aleksa was saying, what value is this actually bringing? What's the cool bit? So I think that's how to ruthlessly prioritize your features, is think of everything, cost it up, realize that you can't afford it. You knew that before you started, that's fine. And then just scale right back. But I think the other thing people overlook, given that really Sputnik is a software agency, I remember having many conversations with Guy, if he's listening to this podcast, which I suspect he will, about us being a UX agency. He's like, okay, you're our UX guys. I'm like, no, Guy, software guys. He'll probably edit this from the podcast because it's funny. But we're really passionate about UX. Like UX is like, we love it. It's such an important part of everything. Users have really high expectations. They've been using iPhones and Uber and Auto Trader for decades. And then they come along and go, right, I've built this really cool technical thing. Here it is. It's in Times New Roman with black text on a white screen. And it's like a dev's built it. And it's just not engaging, not inspiring. It works, but it won't be used. And therefore it doesn't work. It fails. So I think if you launch an MVP that's so minimum, you're not testing your hypothesis, you're testing your customer's patience. and the amount of value you can bring really defines how much they'll tolerate your poor implementation of your vision. But I think thinking about the UX stuff is really, really important. Like if you get the design wrong, people won't use it, and you'll have to redo all the design later on. If you get the front end dev wrong, it's gonna affect the user experience. It'll load slower, or things won't line up properly, and it'll look I don't know, untrustworthy. And then you'll have to end up rebuilding it again. You can cut some corners in back end, but tech debt is going to bite you. So build it reasonably well. So the only thing you can cut corners on is features. Like do the thing you need to do, and see if people want it and will pay for it. And then you could add all the other APIs and a CMS and an admin console and a dashboard and all the other bits that you put back in the box during your convergent thinking bit.
That's brilliant response to that. Brilliant answer. Thank you very much. Aleksa, do you have anything to build on that? Any thoughts on that?
I'll just add to what Andy has said, the importance on the UX and the MVPs and your in Andy's word, Times New Roman on the white screen. It is a product. It needs to have that engagement. It doesn't mean that you're going to spend 80% of your budget on your UI and UX, but you need to be considering that. And you're considering in light of what you know about your customer. I think one thing that we expect from founders to do and know is to know their customer. So I think hopefully they will know where that balance is, and with help with a professional, be able to get to that level. Depending, I'm thinking now, depending what you're going, to consumer market, where that boundary for quality UX is quite high, or you're going to B2B, where you can perhaps think about more kind of usable UX, but still need to think about that. That's why we have on purpose built capability in the Venture Studio around UI and UX in that sort of agile startup mindset, but still not to forget about it, really.
Right, brilliant. Thank you. All right, that feels like a good place to hit pause. We didn't set out to make this a two-parter, but the conversation just kept flowing. Way too much good stuff to squeeze into one episode. So that's part one. In part two, we'll get into the numbers, detailing budgets required for MVPs, handling technical debt, and making smart early decisions that set you up to scale. Thanks for listening to Fast Growth the Venture Studio Way. And if you've got value from this episode, go ahead and like, subscribe, and share it with someone building something exciting. And if you want to learn more about how EHE Ventures Studio supports ambitious founders with funding, tech, and strategic advice, check us out at ehe.ai. See you again in part two.